Hello, everybody. This is Tali Berman, autism specialist and author, part of the Whole Child team, along here with
Roni Entenvisoker, individualized biomedical nutritionist. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. We are two of the four Whole Child team members, and we are doing our summer sessions series, which is a video series Q&A. So families and parents and professionals from all over the world are submitting questions, and we are sort of pulling from the whole lot of questions, and we're going to be answering 2 or 3 in each video. So here is video number 1. And by the way, beneath this link, sorry, one second, beneath this link, we'll also put the link where you can submit your question if you haven't submitted your question yet and would like to submit it. So we're going to dive right in. Some questions I might answer from my sort of therapeutic perspective. Some questions, Roni, you might answer. It seems like a more biomedical question. And some questions we might answer together where we feel like we can sort of both have input to share on the question. So we're going to start with question number 1. And question number 1 here is from Mary. Mary is writing in from Florida in the United States. Her son is 29 years old. And I was really very touched by your question, Mary. And the question is this: how can I tell if our handsome 29-year-old son with autism would like to have some kind of relationship with the girl? Whenever I mention if he would like a girlfriend, he yells no, but he says no to many things, possibly out of fear of changing his routine. Because I've been fortunate enough to have experienced much good and love in my life, I know how deficient his life is. What can I do about the sadness and depression I suffer from knowing that our beloved son is so alone in his life? So Mary, I'm really glad that you asked this question. I think this is a question many parents have at many stages of their child's life, whether their child is young and don't yet have a very close, intimate friendship, or as they get older, if they don't have the kind of relationship, especially romantic relationship, that many of us are used to or find one of the most fulfilling aspects of our lives. So I think this is a really important question. I think one that sort of like tugs at the heartstrings of many parents. So I'm glad that you've asked it. And I sort of have 2 main things to say to that, which is, number 1, it's important not to make any assumptions about what our child's experience is based on our own experience in life, right? So as Mary was saying, you know, fulfilling relationship is a big part of her life. And her son at this point hasn't really mentioned, expressed, or said that he feels lacking in any way. And so it's important for us not to impose our views, impose our priorities, impose what's important in our life onto our children, right? Because it could very well be that he is very fulfilled in his relationship with you, in his relationship with his father, in his relationship with his siblings. Mary also mentioned a couple of other social activities he's involved in. And for our children, that might be enough. And I went through a stage myself when my younger son was not especially social, and I'd feel sad at times when he was alone, and I had to really work on that aspect of, just because that might be something that was difficult for me doesn't mean that it feels lacking for him. And so I think the first thing is to really be aware of when we're putting our own ideas on our child and not making those assumptions. And that's one way you can really address sort of the depression, Mary, that you talked about, is really understanding and challenging that notion that just because it might be challenging for you doesn't mean that he's not actually living a life that he feels very loved, fulfilled, and a sense of belonging in his family or whatever small community he might have. So that's the first piece, especially because he hasn't expressed in any way that that's lacking for him, right? So especially when that's the case, you want to be really aware of not putting that on our kids. Now, sometimes kids do express that, and it might be that he just doesn't know how to express that, right? Doesn't have the words or the language for that. So my other thought would be is to really begin by just exposing your child, your son at any age, to those ideas and those concepts. So that would mean, for example, reading books about autism and intimate relationships, autism and sexuality, autism and friendship, autism and adolescence. There's really a lot of great books on the topic. And for example, Chantel Cecily Kira is a great author on this topic. She has a son in his 20s with autism, talks a lot about adolescence and sexuality and relationships. And instead of trying to gather information from your son first, I would suggest really exposing him to those ideas and those notions. And by doing that, you're giving him very concrete material to work with. And after reading a section, you can ask him more specific questions. Is what I read something that you would like too? is a story that I just read about something that you would like in your own life? And it can help start and spark those conversations, give him a channel to really talk about it when without that kind of concrete context, it might be really vague and something a really hard thing for him to express. So those would be my two basic ideas. Is number one, be very aware of not making any assumptions about his experience, especially when not only has he not expressed that it's lacking, when you've asked him, he said no, right? Although he might say no to a lot of things, we also might need to trust that that's really his experience. But if you're not sure if that's truly his experience, is to really expose, talk about it, get into the conversations, use materials, use books from people with autism or parents, to really spark those conversations in a more concrete way and see more deeply how your child feels about that. And if it is something that they really want, if it is something they're really lacking, then it's a whole different set of strategies and goals about helping them to find those relationships, to be part of social networks that help them really have a sense of fulfillment and belonging that you, Mary, as a parent, really express feeling in your own life. So those are the main pieces I wanted to share. About that. I just want to add, Roni, before you go on to the next question.
Yeah.
It's a little bit longer. Mary sort of gave a lot of information in her question there, so I kind of edited what I had shared. But at the end, she also talks about, which is sort of a different topic, but response is similar, which is her fear because her son is older and they are getting older, about their own death and how he would experience their own death. That he would feel like they've neglected him, that they've abandoned him, that they've left him, and have a lot of concerns about what he might do with that. And so to that topic, I would suggest very much the same thing of first of all, not making assumptions about what his experience might be, but then also really getting into it in a direct way, not just by asking questions, but by really reading books, listening to podcasts, watching videos that really share the kind of concepts about death that you would like to share with your son, the perspectives around it, so that you can really get into that conversation and not wonder what he might think about it, but really create a context so he can understand it in a particular way. And so I think I just wanted to add that piece because both if you're talking about death or if you're talking about intimate relationships, the importance of not making assumptions, at the same time, really getting into very direct conversations with concrete material to sort of unravel it further if you want to explore if there is something there that maybe your child or adolescent doesn't have the words yet to express. So that's the first question for Mary. What's that?
Yeah, I said those are great tips. I always learn so much from hearing you answer other people's questions and working together.
I mean, these are juicy topics that are important to unpack, not just for kids with needs. This is important for all kids. Making assumptions about how are they feeling? Are they feeling badly about themselves? Are they feeling challenged about things? We have our own life experiences, and it's so easy just to dump it on our kids.
To impart it, right.
Expect that my needs are their needs and my wants are their wants, but they are their own beings, and it's important to really create that separation. And also add one more thing, although I could talk about this topic forever, especially because not only is it misguided, meaning we might make assumptions about their experience that might not be accurate, but we might actually plant a seed that we don't intend to plant, meaning if your son is totally fine and fulfilled in his life, and he feels like he has loving parents and a loving sibling, whatever it is, but we begin to plant the seed of maybe this isn't enough, maybe he's lacking something, maybe he's feeling really alone, it might actually conjure up that experience, which is the last intention in the world, that you really have. So it's important not to put it on your child, both because it might not be accurate, but also because we don't want to facilitate an experience of feeling lacking if that really isn't his experience.
Absolutely.
Okay. And now to you, Roni, for the next question.
That's great tips. Okay, so our next question is from Sharon in South Africa regarding her 20-year-old. Very different kind of question, very different topic. Sharon asked about resistant epilepsy. How to get control when you have tried everything, and how to cope with the fear and anxiety that serious seizures take on the whole family. So this is a heavy question. Resistant epilepsy is a very challenging health condition to be dealing with, whether or not on the spectrum.
Can I ask you a question, Ronnie? Because I'm not I don't know what resistant epilepsy is. Can you explain a little bit what that is versus?
You know, I'm assuming that he is resistant to the treatments that they've tried.
I figured. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so again, this is a difficult situation to be in when you feel like you've tried everything that that conventional medicine has to offer. What do we do? So interestingly, in the biomed world, the biomedical nutrition world, there are a couple of different therapies that have been shown recently to be effective for a lot of people with this condition. The first one that comes to mind for me really is the ketogenic diet or a modified ketogenic diet. This is something that we've seen a lot of research on in recent years. Just for people who don't know, ketogenic diet is when you go on a special diet that's typically very high in fat and protein and very low in carbohydrates to induce your body to create ketone bodies, which is an alternate source of energy besides glucose. So for a lot of people, that diet helps to control and reduce their seizures, sometimes up to 50% and more of the seizures. Even with a modified ketogenic diet, which means it's not strictly ketogenic, there's a little bit more flexibility. So if you haven't tried this, if this family, Sharon, if you haven't tried it, I would definitely look into it, see if there's somebody who can support you. There's a lot of material online about it, but I would definitely find a good practitioner who can help you to understand more and to see if it's relevant for your son. Definitely worth doing. In addition, there's also been a lot of information out there, and Tali, you know a lot about this, about CBD and how effective that can be for treating seizures. Again, I don't know if this family, Sharon, if you've tried it, if you've looked into it, using medical cannabis products to control seizures, but there's a lot of practitioners that specialize in this, and there's a lot of great information. Tali, do you have anything specific to share about that?
Well, I just, because part of when you submit a question, we have a series of questions. We ask you what your name, where you're from, what your question is, and what have you already tried, or what context do you want to give us so we can answer your question in a more specific way. And she actually did write diet. I don't know which diet specifically she meant, traditional anti-epileptics and cannabis. And so I just want to add, since you mentioned cannabis too, that it's something that if she's tried, and hasn't quite seen the right effects with, that it's an important thing to not give up right away on, right? I just wanted to add that piece.
Very good point.
I know she definitely might have had the experience of like, I tried the CBD, it didn't help, and so we just gave up. And I know, we've been talked recently to Dr. Berger about this, who's the pediatrician, board certified pediatrician on the whole child team, who is cannabis certified and does a lot of incredible work with cannabis. And he was just recently telling us how, a child was not doing well, actually in a way sort of regressed when it was just CBD, and not until they added a component of THC did they see the kind of effects they were really hoping for. And so he's so amazing in his experience in being able to really refine it and get the right balance and get the right dosing and get the right delivery. And so since it's been so hugely successful with so many families, I would just like to, say that to Sharon, the importance of really working with someone who is very trained and very experienced in using cannabis as a treatment for epilepsy, because it might take a little bit of time to figure out the exact balance that can really help her son. I just know in our talking with Dr. Berger how important that is, because sometimes it might take a while, but then once you get it, it can be really a monumental thing.
I think what you mentioned is also relevant for so many other biomedical treatments and supplement protocols. Not to give up after having tried one kind of magnesium or one form of amino acid. There are so many different forms. We're so unique. This is a very individualized approach. So really being sure to work with somebody who's familiar and who can guide you through that process and help you come up with the right protocol for your child.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Dr. David Berger, so now I definitely suggest that Sharon looks into. The name of the clinic is, can you remind me, for some reason, Ronnie, I have a
Holistic. Yes. The clinic is Holistic Pediatrics and Family Care, and the cannabis clinic is Holistic Relief.
Holistic Relief. Okay, with WH. So take a look at that. I think that having some guidance and support on that journey will make a big difference. And the only thing I wanted to add, Ronnie, because it sounds like from her question, she asked about how to deal with the sort of stress that these kind of seizures, from what I understood, what it can cause on the family. And I can understand what a stress that can be. And I think obviously the most important step the kind of things you suggested to help really minimize and get those under control, and hopefully things like the ketogenic diet or CBD guided with a practitioner who can really help figure out the exact balance is important. And then I just want to add on top of that the importance of really, Sharon, if you haven't investigated this fully, the importance of really having support. You know, I know many families who have a child who has seizures, there's this feeling of like you can't leave, you know, for a moment. You have to be by this child's side. Totally understandable and for good reason. And I think hopefully as the symptoms begin to alleviate too, if you haven't yet considered that, really finding someone that you trust, that is trained, that can really help support you so that someone else can also be with your child and allow your family to have some freedom, some flexibility, some time away, which I think is an important part of maintaining a healthy lifestyle for the whole family. You know, it sounds like there's other kids involved too. And so really trying to find someone that you trust that can add support to the whole family infrastructure, I think would be an important piece so that there can be, you know, some rest and some relief from the, you know, the vigilance that is required when you have a child who has seizures like that.
Absolutely. And also, I have one more point for Sharon, which is, I mentioned the other biomedical interventions. These are definitely also relevant for your son, Sharon. If you haven't done basic biomedical testing, if you haven't explored what's going on in the gut, if he's not taking any minerals, definitely worth starting to do some deeper exploration to see if you can identify any root causes that might be contributing to the epilepsy. Working with a biomedically trained neurologist or any general biomed practitioner could at least help get you started in that direction. So I highly recommend that as well.
Great. Thank you, Roni. Thank you, Sharon and Mary, for your questions. I think what's important about these questions is that even if they're not the questions that you submitted as a parent, these are questions that so many parents have and in so many different ways. So I think there's so much we can learn from other people's questions. So I think it's important to really hear what other parents are asking and reap what you can to apply to your own child. So you will hear from us in the next video, the summer sessions, where we'll be answering a couple more questions. But we're really excited to share that anyone who is interested in having, you know, people on your team who both give you the biomedical piece and the therapeutic perspective, which is what Roni and I have created in the whole child team and the whole child package, because we have seen it to be the most impactful way to help your child by healing underlying medical symptoms and then addressing a lot of the fundamentals in development in a very broad and expansive way. We are offering a $250 discount on our whole child coaching packages until August 1st. So we have a limited number of spots at that discounted price, but we will list a website. You can just go on, apply by answering a short application. No commitment there. You can decide to fill the application and then decide it's not for you. And then once we receive an application, we can set up a call, discuss it further, and if it feels right for you, we'd be happy to support you on that journey. So we hope to hear from you. Anything else you want to add, Roni, before we close?
Just want to say thank you for the questions, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Right. All right. Take care, everybody, and we will see you in the next video.
Thank you.
Bye.